In this video, I'll be teaching you how to stitch a bias binding to a neckline. Right now I have our front piece stitched to our back piece at the shoulder, and just pretend I have a zipper installed in the back. Your pattern should also tell you what size of bias tape you need, so please go and buy that. My bias binding is about 3/8 of an inch wide when it is folded. So make sure that you buy the right width when you are at the store. Next, I'm just going to measure all the way around my neckline, and this helps me know where to cut my bias tape for the length that I'm going to need. Mine ended up being 12 3/4 inches, so I'm going to take my bias tape, measure 12 3/4 inches, plus 1 inch, which will be 13 3/4 inches. And make a clip mark or mark with your chalk, and use your regular scissors to clip a nice and even line. Next, measure in 1/2 inch and either put a pin or some type of marking there. And then you're going to move to the other end and do the same thing. Place the right side of your bias tape to the right side of your garment along the neckline edge, but with a 1/2 inch overlap over the zipper edge. Then pin all the way around your neckline, matching up exactly the edges of your bias tape to the edges of your fabric neckline. Please pin all seam allowances completely flat if you have ironed them open, because you don't want any of the seam allowance getting caught in your stitches the wrong way. Once you have your neckline pinned, you take it to the machine and start at one end, it doesn't matter which, and you're just going to stitch right in that first fold line next to the neckline. And mine is about 3/8 of an inch, so I'm going to start right where my garment edge starts, so about 1/2 inch in, and you're going to stitch and back stitch. Now stitch carefully all the way around the neckline, carefully removing the pins as you go. Stitch all the way to the other end. And now I'm just showing you that you only need to stitch to the garment edge, not to the bias tape edge, and then back stitch. Next, just double check on the right side of the garment and make sure there's no puckers or gathers. Sometimes this happens if you have a super curved neckline. In my case, I was all good to go, and then just double check, make sure your seam allowances are still laying flat and that none of the excess has been caught in your stitches. Next, find the 1/2 inch overlap of your bias tape on one side, and what we're going to do is just fold that excess over to the wrong side of our garment. And this actually just helps hide all of the raw edges in there in the neckline and just provides a nice clean finish. And then you're going to fold that again in half to the back or wrong side. And on the back or wrong side, it should be a 1/16 of an inch wider than on the front. And you'll see that where I'm pointing to. And this is just so that your stitches get caught in the bias tape on the back. Next, pin all the way around your neckline, making sure to catch both sides of your bias tape. And then once we get to the other end, again, we're going to fold that 1/2 inch overlap in and then fold again in half. So we have that 1/16 of an inch overlap and pin that in place. Okay, now we're going to stitch in the ditch. So we're going to stitch directly in our seam line where our yellow fabric meets the black bias tape. And remember to take out your pins as you go and back stitch at the very beginning and end of your stitch line. Now examine the right side of the garment, make sure there are no puckers and that everything lays flat. Now flip to the wrong side of the garment. Make sure that all of your stitch in the ditch stitches have caught your bias tape edge all the way around the neckline. Sometimes what happens is you move your presser foot just a little bit off and there happens to be little holes where you have missed the back side of your bias tape. If that happens, just go ahead and insert a few extra stitches there. Then zip up your zipper and make sure that you have a perfect horizontal matching line where the bias meets the neckline of the garment. If everything looks good, you are all done, and make sure to give a good iron.